This third episode centers on the legal representation of Central American Latinos in the U.S., politically and in governmental institutions. How are they categorized legally, and what are the further implications of this in fundamental aspects of daily life, such as citizenship, language, education, and employment? Currently, Latinos and Hispanics represent approximately 17.6% of the total U.S. population, about 56.6 million citizens. As a minority group, they have been fighting for new job opportunities and an improvement of their quality of life since the beginning of the minority collective. Central Americans fought alongside other Hispanics in joint social groups, such as the movement in answer to the H.R. 4437 law and the Proposiciones 187 and 209.
November 6th, all of us who can vote, we are going to vote for question 4, for the DREAM Act. In addition to pass the DREAM Act, we are going to pass comprehensive immigration reform.
The consequences and achievements of both those movements are visible in both today's American legal system and society.
So I actually found out that my dad had become a U.S. citizen later on in his life when I was a young girl. So it was really hard for me to wrap my mind around this idea that my dad could have been here for so many years and not become a citizen till, he was a bit older. So I've gotten to see different members of my family become citizens at different points in my life. And it really shows me that the U.S. really provides a great opportunity for those seeking the American dream, or at least their own version of it.
The census of 1930 was the first that included a Latino community, mentioning Mexicans in particular. In 1970, as a consequence of racially segregated social reality, the census for a second time included a checkbox for people of Latino descent. In 2010, as part of all ethnic and race categories, the census defined Hispanic or Latino as a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race.
Another struggle that I go through here as a Latina is not really knowing what race category that I fall into. For some groups of friends, I'm too light-skinned. For other groups of friends, I'm more darker-skinned than what they would classify as either black or white. So you go through this constant conversation of saying, am I black, am I white, am I something else, am I mixed race? Because our countries don't really use these classifications the way that Americans do. I've been at a table where I argued with other people about the race of certain Latina actresses. Some people said those aren't white women, and I disagree. Their complexion is white, but because they're Hispanic or they're Latina, they don't fit neatly into the socially constructed idea of race.
Census determined that 68% of Hispanics in the U.S. speak Spanish fluently. From this, 58% are bilingual, or English is their native language. Most non-bilingual Hispanics are Salvadorians, Hondurans, and Guatemalans, with 70% limited English proficiency.
And I was born in Maryland, actually in a D.C. hospital. I speak Spanish, I speak English, and I know a little bit of French, but I'm not as fluent as I am in both other languages.
No, I speak English and Spanish, but I'm more comfortable expressing myself in English.
And I speak Spanish and English.
I speak English and Spanish.
I speak Spanish, English, and Italian.
I am both current in English as well as Spanish.
Hablo inglés, español y un poco de francés.
Bueno, la ciudadanía no, porque no soy ciudadano americano todavía. No he podido hacer la ciudadanía porque al llegar tarde aquí a este país se me hizo bien difícil hablar el idioma inglés. No lo hablo. Nada más que entiendo un poquito de idioma inglés, pero no lo hablo. Entonces, para la ciudadanía se me hace bien difícil y no he podido hacer la entrevista para la ciudadanía.
Yo más que hablo español y hablo inglés.
Proficiency of the Spanish or English language is linked in three ways: the contact they keep with their origin country, the contact with other Latinos in the U.S., and the use of language at home. The census data describes that Central Americans from the first and second generation tend to have better academic preparation and English language proficiency.
Other Central Americans living in the U.S., especially the American ones. I just see them as an American that knows Spanish, and a lot of them, from what I noticed, the millennials and the around my age group and generation, a lot of them do not speak Spanish, and they're not that fluent. So I feel like there's a bit of a barrier and a challenge for them. I've learned and I've managed to keep the language within, my language barrier, because I've known that since I was young, there's more opportunities to grow, and more viable opportunities, knowing another language. So it's actually helped me out with getting a job in certain situations, and it's provided a better outcome for me.
Personally, one of the struggles that I go through, even though English is my first and native language, is that I sometimes confuse my ideas. Sometimes I write a little too verbose. I confuse some concepts when I'm writing an article. I've had a professor give me feedback on an article, and he says, I think this isn't what you meant to say, and will, fix my SVO, my subject, verb, and object, because I'm thinking of my ideas in Spanish as well, just because that comes by first nature.
The Education Department is a federal office that changed its measurements after strikes, social movements, and Supreme Court cases led by Latinos. Plyer versus Doe was a Supreme Court case that obliged, quote, all schools to not refuse the participation of immigrant, to not discriminate against Latinos for the access to the schools independently of his migratory status, which established that education had to be accessible for every child from K through 12. Central American immigrants tend to have much lower educational achievement compared to the overall foreign and native-born adult populations.
I don't really see that there's many challenges for me. I think I have the average challenge of a typical American. I have the opportunity to go to college, and just like anyone else here, I can gain a scholarship, earn it, apply for grants, apply for financial aid.
Central American immigrants are more likely to be employed compared to other immigrants. 74% of Central Americans work in services, transportation, or maintenance occupations, jobs that do not usually require education levels or knowledge of the English language.
I would go to my room and I would just sit there and tell myself, I have to do better. I have to help my parents so that they don't have to go through this. My father, he was a construction worker, my mother cleaned. And they had these great bosses. So they were actually husband and wife. And they treated my family very well.
Immigrants face countless struggles. If you could just imagine coming to this country by yourself and you don't know anyone, you don't speak the language, you don't even have permission to be here, pretty much everything can go wrong. But, a lot of the immigrants, they come, they try to stay optimistic, but to get more detail, they face lots of issues.
When it comes to jobs and other situations, people do look at my last name, obviously, and it's Velasquez. So immediately, I'm Hispanic and of, Latin descent. So I don't know if that's ever affected me personally, where people did not want to hire me because of my background.
One of the biggest struggles I have as a growing professional woman in my field is that I do not have the same connections as my white peers. I don't have an aunt or an uncle that works at a big name company to, give me that first or second internship. I didn't have that. And as a Latino, you're usually first or second generation, meaning that your family just got here as well to come and work. So as a young professional, the connections just aren't there. I am still working to get my foot in the door at certain places. And because of the hardworking skill and drive that my Latino parents gave me, that's something that I've translated into, the corporate culture of America, which is, keep fighting until you get to the top, because my family taught me that way.
Many Latinos feel they are not represented in Congress, as the number of representatives is not equal with the number of Latino citizens living in the U.S.
I don't feel any type of way represented as a Dominican Latina politically. I don't really follow the politics there. I should, but I do follow them here. I do vote. I am a Democrat. I belong to the Democrat Party because I believe that we are one and we have a voice. I believe that we should try to all help each other due to whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. You know, I'm getting a little emotional, but I feel like it should be about, you know, community, communalism. We've been taught for so long to be individuals and, you know, survival of the fittest, but people need our help. If we don't help them, then who will? It's hard to decide who helps and who doesn't, but if you have the power to do so, why not?
Representing Puerto Rico, and I think that we have to abide by those laws and those regulations, and any decision taken affects Puerto Ricans, yet we have no say in what happens. I also think it's crazy that we don't get to vote for president, even though he's also our president, the leader of our nation.
However, some are hopeful that following generations, higher education and bilingual Latinos provide more opportunity to achieve political positions.
The amount of Costa Ricans in the United States are actually very few. I don't actually think the census keeps a tally of how many Costa Ricans are in the U.S. As far as Latino, I think there's a big support for Latinos as well as a lot of discrimination. I do belong to a political party. I belong to the Democratic Party, and I do vote. And the reason I choose the Democratic Party is because they generally support the people in this country versus big business, like the Republicans tend to do, and I feel like the people are what makes a country.
As a Puerto Rican, I feel, or Latin American, I feel I'm represented in the politics of the United States.
Por tanto, yo entiendo que nosotros los latinos tenemos muchísimas oportunidades representando a todo el pueblo hispanoamericano en la política.
While data indicates that certain political and social struggles have been addressed and are on the way to improving, there are still many inconsistencies and inequalities that Central American Latinos face in basic civil rights. Through community groups and accurate political representation, change is slowly being made to help and support immigrants and their next family generations.